Before we start, let me tell you something. This space, WinOwl, is not for people looking for pretty stories with perfect endings. Here we tell the kind of stories that scrape, that hurt, that force you to look at yourself in the mirror. If you like stories that feel like a late-night confession, subscribe to the WinOwl channel, hit like on this video, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. What I'm going to tell you today is the story of a wedding destroyed in a matter of minutes, not because of an actual affair, but because of something even more dangerous, the perfect mix between a carefully crafted lie and a man who doubted the woman he claimed to love. I'm going to tell you how I humiliated my fiancée on our wedding day, how a so-called friend turned love into a sabotage business, and whether it's even possible to rebuild something after the damage is done in front of everyone. If you stay until the end, I want you to tell me if you think I deserve a second chance, and if a betrayal can be born from your own lack of trust. Subscribe now, because what's coming isn't easy to listen to, and it might make you question how you would react when doubt sinks its teeth in. I was the man who ruined his own wedding because he trusted a screen more than the eyes of the woman he loved. And even though I'm telling you this now with a calm voice, there are still nights when I hear it again, the echo of her dress cutting through the air as she ran from the altar. My name is Noah, I'm 34, and a little over a year ago I became a local meme without meaning to. The groom who canceled the wedding live. That's what they called me in the comments on the videos people recorded with their phones. Everyone had fun with the spectacle. No one knew that behind that scene there was a story more twisted than it looked, and much sadder. I want to tell you everything from the beginning, no shouting, no dramatics. Just the facts, like someone reconstructing an accident frame by frame. Because sometimes, when you carefully describe the horror you lived through, it hurts less. Or at least, that's what I want to believe. Tell me something before we go on. If, on your wedding day, you got proof that your partner had cheated on you, would you cancel everything right there, in front of all your guests? Or would you wait to talk in private, even if you were burning up inside? Lily and I had been together for 4 years. She is, or was, I still don't know how to say it, one of those women who don't need to make noise to fill a room. Dark hair, big eyes, soft smile. There was something in the way she spoke, like she was always holding something fragile in her hands. I met her at the company, on a project that forced us to stay late going over reports. I remember one of those nights. The office almost empty, the cold ceiling lights, and the blue glow of the screens. She walked over to my desk with a cup of coffee and leaned against the edge, tilting her body slightly toward me. I could feel the warmth of her so close to mine. The smell of her shampoo, coconut with something citrusy, hit me harder than the caffeine. If you keep frowning like that, you're going to get more wrinkles, she said softly. Her fingers brushed my forehead, barely, like an absent-minded caress. I pretended to stay focused on the report, but my breathing changed. She noticed. She stayed there, close, too close to still be just a coworker. Has that ever happened to you? That moment when you know that if you move an inch, if you turn your head, your lips will end up far too close? Nothing else happened that night. We kept working, talked about random things, and then went our separate ways. But that was the beginning. Then came the messages, the quick meals at the corner place, the glances in meetings that lingered longer than they should. When we decided to move in together, I swore I wouldn't repeat my parents' mistakes. They had a relationship where distrust was like another piece of furniture in the house. I wanted something different. Transparency, complicity. Or at least, that's what I said. The wedding came as the natural next step. There was no big showy proposal. It happened in the kitchen on a Sunday, her in pajamas, hair tied up in a loose, messy knot. I took her hand, slid the ring on her finger, and when she said yes my eyes filled with tears I tried to hide by lowering my head. The first person Lily told was her best friend, Rachel. Rachel. If I told you that from the very beginning something about her felt off, I'd be lying. No, it was the opposite. Rachel came across as charming, funny, always willing to help. The picture-perfect maid of honor. Or at least, that's what I thought. Let me ask you, have you ever felt instant sympathy for someone and then realized you knew absolutely nothing about that person? Rachel and Lily met at university. Tons of shared stories, trips, parties, ex-boyfriends. Rachel knew everything about Lily. Her insecurities, her doubts, her exes. I showed up later. From the moment we started planning the wedding, Rachel dove in headfirst. She went with Lily to see dresses, tasted cakes, suggested songs for the ceremony. She'd send me memes on WhatsApp now and then, teasing me about my nervous groom face. Once, at the joint bachelor or bachelorette party they threw for us, she got a little too close while everyone was dancing. The music was loud, colored lights flashing, the smell of alcohol and perfume thick in the air. Rachel, in a short, glittery dress clinging to her body, leaned in to say something in my ear. I felt her warm breath on my neck, a faint brush against my chest as she steadied herself. Her hand stayed on my shoulder a few seconds longer than it needed to. "Take care of Lily," she said. "She always gives herself completely." There was something in that sentence, and in the way she looked at me afterwards, that stuck with me. I couldn't tell if she meant it as a warning, a threat, or a confession. But at the time, I let it slide. She was her best friend, right? I figured I was just overthinking it. The months leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind. Rehearsals, payments, guest lists. I was tired, a little irritable. Lily too. We argued over stupid things and then made up with long hugs on the couch, breathing in sync, her head resting on my chest, her hand slipping under my t-shirt, stroking my skin like she needed to make sure I was still there. It's strange how those simple moments are the ones you miss the most later. Not the big trip, not the photos, not the fancy dinners. That feeling of skin against skin, unhurried, with nothing on the agenda. Tell me, do you think someone can destroy all of that in a single second, just because they didn't know how to handle a doubt? The wedding day arrived. The morning was overcast, like even the sky couldn't make up its mind. The venue was an old house converted for events, with a garden in the back and warm lights hanging from the trees. Rachel had pushed hard for that place. She said it was Instagrammable and the pictures would turn out amazing. I got there early, suit in hand, sweating more than made sense. My hands were trembling a little, but not from fear, or at least, that's what I thought. I got ready in a small room with an antique mirror that warped the image a bit. I saw my reflection, crooked tie, dark circles under my eyes. While I was trying to knot the tie, someone knocked on the door. "Can I come in?" It was Rachel's voice. She walked in without waiting for an answer. She was wearing a wine-colored bridesmaid dress, tight, with most of her back exposed. A sweet perfume flooded the room all at once. "Lily looks gorgeous," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "I don't think I've ever seen her this nervous." She smiled to one side and came closer. "Let me help you with that, your tie looks like it's about to strangle you." Her fingers moved confidently around my neck, pulling and adjusting the fabric. She was so close I could feel the soft brush of her breasts against my chest as she leaned in. A scene that, in another context, would have been dangerous. "All set," she whispered, tightening the final knot. "Try not to pass out at the altar." She winked and left. In that moment, if you'd asked me whether I trusted her, I would have said yes. No hesitation. And I would have been wrong. Minutes before the ceremony, while the guests were finding their seats, I got the message that changed everything. I was out in the garden, hiding for a second behind some columns, trying to breathe deeply. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened it. "Before you get married, you should see this. I'm doing you a favor." There were 3 photos attached, and several screenshots of a conversation. In the photos, Lily was at a bar counter, kissing a man I knew well, Martine, her coworker. In another, they were walking into a hotel together. In the third, you could see Lily in a room, from behind, her dress half pulled down and his body pressed up against hers, his hands running along her waist. Everything slightly blurry, but the intention crystal clear. Then, the messages. "I miss you, I can't believe you're actually going to marry him. I can't just leave Noah like that, it'd be too much. Just don't let him find out, and we'll keep things like they are." The names in the chat, Lily Ring and Martine. I felt something tear inside my chest. But at the same time, another part of me, colder, started analyzing. Dates, times, details. The messages looked like they were from a few weeks back, right when Lily had been working late with Martine on a project. What would you have done right then? Would you tell yourself it's all a setup and breathe through it, or would your first reaction be pure rage? I didn't breathe. Or I breathed wrong. I just stared at the screen, the hum of voices around me fading into a distant buzz. Someone called out to me from far away, "Noah, it's time." What I did next is something I'm still ashamed of. I walked into the hall. Soft music playing, guests standing, Lily walking down the aisle. She was beautiful. The dress fell perfectly over her body, the white fabric glowing against her brown skin. Her eyes were shining, wet, but smiling. Every step she took toward me was a promise. I, on the other hand, had in my pocket the supposed proof of her betrayal and a cocktail of emotions pounding against my ribs. When she reached my side and took my hand, I felt the same warmth as always. The same scent, the same short, nervous breaths she always had when she was on edge. The officiant started speaking. I wasn't listening. I kept glancing at my phone out of the corner of my eye like it was a weapon. Until I couldn't take it anymore. Wait, I said, cutting the man off. The murmur in the room was instant. Lily looked at me, confused. What's wrong, Noah? I pulled out my phone. I held it up, like I needed everyone to see what I was seeing. Ridiculous, I know. But in that moment, my head was boiling. What's wrong is. I swallowed hard. That before I marry you, I need to know if this is real. I tapped the screen. The photos came up big and bright in the middle of the silence. Some guests leaned forward to see better. Others covered their mouths with their hands. Lily froze. I watched the color drain from her face, then rush back in a flush. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. What is that? She asked, her voice already breaking. You tell me, I answered. Because if you're going to marry me while you're sneaking into hotels with your coworker, at least have the decency to admit it. That sentence. Have the decency. If I could, I would rip it out of my own mouth with my bare hands. A heavy silence dropped over the room. Rachel, from the front row, brought a hand to her chest, as if she were shocked. I watched her look at the photos from afar, her face twisted into a picture-perfect horror. Lily shook her head. Noah, that's not real, I didn't. The sobs cut her words in half. No? I pushed on, with that fake courage that anger and preemptive humiliation give you. Here are your messages, Lily. You going to say I wrote these too? I held the phone closer to her. Her fingers were trembling so badly she almost dropped it. I didn't write this, she whispered. Noah, look at me. I didn't look at her. Or if I did, all I saw was guilt where maybe there was terror. I can't get married like this, I said, my voice sounding steadier than I actually felt. I can't marry someone I don't trust anymore. There was a wave of murmurs, chairs scraping, someone coughing. The officiant had no idea where to put himself. Lily took a step back. Then another. Then, don't marry me, she said, barely above a whisper. But this is not going to stay like this. She turned around and almost ran down the aisle, grabbing her dress with both hands so she wouldn't trip. A few people called her name. No one dared to stop her. I stayed there, in front of that makeshift altar, with 100 people staring at me, my phone still in my hand. The groom who cancels the wedding over a discovered affair. A perfect show. Tell me, if you had been there as a guest, who would you have believed in that moment? The reception dissolved on its own. Some tried to come up to me, pat my back, say things like, better now than later. I nodded, not really hearing them. Rachel came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. Noah. I'm so sorry, she whispered in my ear. I never imagined Lily would. I gently pushed her away. I didn't want anyone touching me. When the hall was almost empty, I sat down at one of the tables, staring at a ridiculous centerpiece of white flowers that didn't mean anything anymore. I looked at the photos again. In one of them, the hotel one, I noticed something odd. A sign in the background, behind the two of them, with the name of the place. The font was different from how I remembered it. Because I knew that hotel. We'd gone there once, for work. The logo didn't look the same. That's when my anger started to cool, and something worse slipped in, doubt about my doubt. Has it ever happened to you that after exploding, after saying horrible things, after making a drastic decision, you start noticing details you didn't want to see before? Self-respect, some people call it. Pride, I call it. Stupid pride. I stayed in the hall until late, avoiding my family, the few guests who remained, the staff clearing glasses and plates. The sound guy, a dude with a scruffy beard, came over to turn off the lights and saw me still sitting there, alone. "Hey, man," he said, with that mix of curiosity and pity. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "Do you guys have cameras?" I asked suddenly. He frowned. "Yeah, in a few spots." "Why?" "I need to see them. All of today. And last night, if possible." He hesitated. Talked to his boss. In the end, I guess curiosity got the better of them. They took me to a small office in the back, with a screen showing several black and white squares. We started going through the footage. I was looking for. I don't even know. Something. Anything that could tell me if what I'd seen on my phone was real or a setup. Hours, fast-forwarding and rewinding recordings. I saw myself arriving, guests greeting each other, Lily coming in through another door hours before. I watched her walk around with her dress still unadjusted, laughing with her friends while they fixed the train. There was no sign of Martine anywhere. And then, on a camera set up in the hallway leading to the bathrooms, I saw her, Rachel. She was alone, in her bridesmaid dress, phone in hand. She was walking fast, looking around like she was searching for something. On another camera, you could see her entering the room where I'd gotten dressed earlier. That room also had a camera. The grainy image showed a scene that, without context, would have seemed irrelevant. Rachel walked in, glanced around, opened the drawer where I'd kept my things, took out my phone, typed something, put it back. Then she fixed her hair in front of the mirror, smiled at her reflection, and left. A chill ran through me. "What time was that?" I asked. The sound guy rewound with the mouse. He pointed at the time in the corner of the screen. Minutes before I received the message. Right then, something inside me clicked into place. Like the pieces of a twisted puzzle finally started to fit together. If Rachel had access to my phone, what else could she have done? You, in my place, what would you have thought at that moment? Would you have dared to believe that your fiancé's best friend had used you as a weapon? I also asked for the recordings from the back parking lot, the service entrance, the bar area from previous days. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but I kept going. In one of those clips, I saw Rachel meeting with a woman I didn't know. Dyed blonde hair, business suit, boss energy. They shook hands, talked for a few minutes. Then the woman took out a folder, showed it to her, Rachel nodded. The guy from the venue frowned. She looks familiar. I think she's the one who booked that other wedding that got ruined, like, 3 months ago. Another ruined wedding? I asked. Yeah. Big scandal. The groom showed up drunk, the bride left crying. I don't know the full story. But I remember her face. The ladies. I etched every detail into my mind. I asked for copies of that footage. I offered to pay. They didn't take the money, but they did keep that look, the look of people who know they're watching some big problem being born. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't call Lily, she'd blocked me. I realized when I tried to dial and the call wouldn't go through. I sent her a message anyway, I need to talk to you. I think it was all a setup. The double blue check never appeared. Instead of sleeping, I sat in front of my computer and started doing the only thing left to do: investigate. Cold, almost clinical. I looked up the number that had sent me the photos. Result: prepaid SIM card, no clear data. I searched the hotel name from the picture. I found official images. The logo didn't quite match the one in the photo. The one in the photo looked like it had been cut and pasted. I opened the pictures in a basic editor. Zoomed in. There were faint cutout lines around the figures. Nothing an untrained eye would notice at first glance, but there they were. Then I thought about the woman in the suit. Who was she? I dove into forums, reviews of the event venue. In one of them, an angry bride described how some Margaret had offered to help her with the planning and ended up leaking things that ruined her wedding. She mentioned the same old house, the same garden. Margaret. I followed the thread. Searching, reading, taking notes. I found another testimony in a private social media group, another sabotaged wedding, another name with the same description. Always circling around the same woman, Margaret. When I saw her picture, taken from the side at some event planner conference, I felt my blood run cold. It was the same blonde woman who appeared with Rachel on the security footage. Rachel hadn't just ruined my wedding out of resentment, she had turned sabotage into part of a business. Tell me something, honestly, do you think someone can be that cold, to profit off other people's pain like that? I spent the next few weeks driven by a mix of guilt and a need for justice. I contacted the other couples. Sent them clips of the recordings, screenshots of Margaret's face. Some of them doubted at first, but once we compared dates, locations, details, the story became too coherent to be a coincidence. Margaret, who sometimes used other names, offered consulting to people who were bitter, jealous, couples on the verge of breaking up. She promised discreet solutions. In reality, she was selling sabotage. And Rachel had been one of her most dedicated clients. At first, I didn't know exactly what Rachel's motivation was. In love with Lily? Jealous that someone else had her? Or just someone incapable of bearing other people's happiness? I found out later, at the police station. But we'll get to that. Before that, I had something more urgent to face: Lily. With the help of a mutual friend, I managed to get her to agree to see me. It was in a small cafe, far from everything. I got there early. Sat at a table in the back. My hands were sweating, even though from the outside I probably looked calm. Funny how the body gives away what the face has already learned to hide. When Lily walked in, I felt a stab in my chest. She was thinner, her hair pulled up in a high bun, almost no makeup on. She looked tired. Her eyes, those eyes I knew so well, looked at me with a mix of caution and contained anger. She sat down across from me without saying hello. "You've got 10 minutes, she said. That's when I understood that what I'd broken wasn't just a wedding. It was the image she had of me. I pulled out the folder I'd brought with me. Printed, organized, almost like a work report. Footage, screenshots, statements. I pushed it toward her across the table. "I just want you to see this," I said. "After that, if you want, you can get up and leave." She hesitated. Finally, she opened the folder. Her eyes moved over the pages. I watched her expression change. Confusion, surprise, disbelief, nausea. "Rachel," she whispered, when she saw a still frame of her best friend walking into the room with my phone. "No." She turned to the next page. Margaret's photo at the conference, the other bride's testimonies, the matching dates. "Her name is Margaret," I explained, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "Or at least that's one of her names. She makes a living sabotaging weddings. Rachel talked to her. She shows up on camera, the night before, here, at the same place where our wedding was supposed to be." Lily looked up. Her eyes were glassy, but she wasn't crying. "And now you believe me?" she asked, pinning me with her gaze. The question cut straight through me. I took a slow breath. "I think I should have believed you from the beginning." A heavy silence settled between us. "Do you know what the worst part of that day was?" she said, without looking away. "It wasn't the photos. It wasn't the guests staring. It was that in the exact moment I needed you to really see me, you chose to believe an anonymous message more than you believed me." I had no defense. She was right. "I'm taking this to the police," I went on. "Not to clear my image, though I need that too, but because we can't let them keep doing this." The other couples agree. "We've already filed a joint complaint. We've got videos, emails, everything." "And what do you expect from me, Noah?" she asked. "That I thank you? That I feel better because now it turns out the bad one was my best friend?" Her words were sharp knives, but I took them. It was the least I owed her. "I don't expect anything," I replied quietly. "Just for you to know the truth. The rest is your decision." In that moment, for a few seconds, all the noise of the cafe faded into the background. It was just her and me, sitting face to face, our fingers resting a few centimeters apart on the tabletop. I could feel the heat coming off her body, the familiar way she held herself, even though now she sat straight and rigid, like a wall. Part of me wanted to reach out, take her hand, tell her I missed her, that every night without her breathing beside me felt like a kind of silent punishment. But I held back. I couldn't ask for closeness after having pushed her so far away. What would you have done? Would you have tried to touch her, risking her pulling her hand back in disgust, or would you have kept your distance like I did? Lily closed the folder. She ran her fingers over it, as if it were something alive. "Does Rachel know you found her out?" she asked. "They've called her in to give a statement," I said. "Margaret too. That's when I found out more." And yes, I did find out. Because a few days later, at the police station, I watched Rachel dodge my gaze. They sat her down in front of us, the affected couples, and the officer in charge of the case. Margaret, flawless in her suit and rehearsed smile, denied everything. "I'm just an event planner," she said. "I can't control what happens in my clients' private lives." The officer slid the recordings across the table. Margaret swallowed, just barely. "Funny how you just happened to be in all these places the day before these weddings blew up, don't you think?" the officer said. Rachel, next to her, was clenching her hands. I looked at her. I remembered her laughter, her jokes, the day she fixed my tie. At one point, Lily couldn't hold back anymore. "Why, Rachel?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why do you hate me so much?" Rachel finally lifted her eyes. There was something in them I couldn't fully decipher, resentment, yes, but also pain, exhaustion. "I don't hate you," she said. You always had everything. The job, the relationship, the calm. I was always the friend on the sidelines. Margaret just helped me put things where they belonged." Margaret tried to cut her off, but it was too late. The officer was already writing everything down. "What we did." Rachel hesitated. "Well, what I did was a mistake. But you were going to marry someone who doesn't trust you anyway. I did you a favor." That's how she tried to justify herself, with that twisted logic. I listened to her and felt something strange. Anger, yes, but also a kind of odd compassion for someone so broken she believed destroying things was a way to balance them. In the end, the case ran its course. I won't bore you with legal details, just know there were charges for fraud, defamation, misuse of personal data. Margaret, the head of the operation, ended up where she needed to end up. Rachel was sentenced to, though less severely, with alternative measures, mandatory therapy. For me, the important part wasn't just that they were punished. It was figuring out what the hell I was supposed to do with all of it. With the guilt, with the public humiliation, with the image of Lily running from the altar. For months, I was the guy some acquaintances pointed at in the street. The one who went too far, the one who should have talked in private. And they were right. I started therapy. I'm not telling you that as some badge of honor, just as a fact. There was something broken in me that had allowed distrust to win so fast. Old wounds, family stories, patterns we repeat without even knowing. Lily and I didn't get back together right away. We didn't even know if we should get back together. We saw each other a few times, like strangers with too much shared history. Coffee, short walks. We talked about everything and nothing. We stepped around the topic of the wedding like people walking around the edge of a crater. One night, months later, it was raining. The city smelled like wet asphalt and gasoline. We ended up taking shelter at my apartment because the storm caught us out on the street. She stopped in the doorway of the living room, looking at everything like it was a museum of something that no longer belonged to her. Same furniture, same photos, some of them turned face down since that day, the same blanket on the couch where we used to tangle up on Sundays. "You didn't change anything," she said. "I didn't know what to change," I answered. We fell quiet. The streetlight came in stripes, drawing shadows across her face. Her clothes were damp, clinging to her body. Her hair, a little messy from the rain, fell across her forehead. There was something painfully familiar and, at the same time, completely new in seeing her like that. I offered her a towel, a t-shirt. She hesitated, then took them. Went into the bathroom to change. When she came out, she was wearing my gray t-shirt, one she knew well. It hung loose on her, slipping off one shoulder, revealing a line of skin that felt almost painful to look at. It was so familiar. The smell of my own soap mixed with her skin filled the air. She sat on the couch, tucking her legs under her. The distance between us was half a meter, but it felt like an entire continent. "I don't know if I'll ever forget what you put me through," she said, with no sugarcoating. "But I also don't know if I can forget everything we lived before that." Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I turned toward her. I could see the tiny hairs standing on her arm, maybe from the cold, maybe from something else. My hands wanted to move on their own, to touch her, to slide up her forearm until our fingers laced together like before. I didn't. "I don't want you to forget," I said. "If you ever decide to forgive me, I want it to be with full awareness of everything. The good and the awful." Lily closed her eyes for a few seconds. Took a deep breath. Her lips parted just a little as she exhaled. I watched her swallow. There was tension in her jaw, but also something softer breaking through. "Do you know what scares me the most?" she asked. "That if I come back to you, and something weird happens again, a tiny doubt, one extra unexplained absence, you'll choose the darkest version of me again instead of just asking." The question hung between us. "I'm scared of that too," I admitted. "That's why I'm trying to change. Not to convince you, but because I don't want to be the man who reacts like I did. With anyone." There was a moment when our eyes locked and stayed there. I felt the same pull as always, but this time mixed with a new kind of caution. Neither of us was the same person anymore. She leaned in toward me a little, maybe without realizing it. I did too. The distance shrank. I could feel her breath on my skin, the warmth radiating from her body wrapped in my t-shirt. One more small movement and our lips would have met. It didn't happen. Lily pulled back a bit, with a small, sad smile. "Not yet," she said. I nodded. It hurt, of course. But I also felt a strange relief. We weren't just repeating the old formula. Something, very slowly, was shifting. Do you think we were being cowards, or brave? It wasn't all magical after that. There were setbacks, days of silence, messages left on read for hours, last-minute cancelled plans. But there were also small steps forward, a joke shared, a memory that didn't sting as much, an afternoon when she fell asleep on the couch with her head on my shoulder and I covered her with the blanket, not daring to move for fear of waking her. The whole thing with Margaret and Rachel kept unfolding in court. The other couples and we stayed in touch. There was this strange kind of brotherhood in sharing the same kind of pain. Some managed to rebuild their relationships, others didn't. In our case, the cancelled wedding became a brutal before and after. The blow that forced us to look inward. For Lily, to question who she trusted and why she'd ignored certain signs about Rachel for years. For me, to face my inability to sit with doubt without burning everything down. I'm not going to tell you this all ended with a brand new wedding and a perfect happy ending. That would be a pretty lie, but still a lie. What I can tell you is that, a year later, Lily and I decided to give ourselves another chance, officially. No dresses, no suits, no old mansions or gardens with string lights. Just the two of us, signing papers in a small office, with quiet witnesses. Before signing, she looked at me with that calm seriousness she's always had. "If you ever doubt me again," she said, "talk to me. Look me in the eye. And if even then you decide not to believe me, at least have the decency to break up with me in private." I smiled, with a mix of shame and tenderness. "Promise," I said. We signed. I didn't feel the same excitement I'd felt before that first wedding, the one that never happened. But I did feel something different: clarity. A kind of tense calm, fully aware of everything that could go wrong, but also of the decision to try anyway. Today, when I remember that day at the altar, I see myself through the eyes of someone who knows he's capable of the worst and, precisely because of that, is trying to be better. I don't know if I'll fully succeed. There are no guarantees. I only know that sometimes the worst betrayal isn't the one who lies, but the one who's willing to believe any lie just to avoid facing their own fears. And this is where I want to ask you, honestly, no performance. Do you think someone like me deserves a second chance? If you had been Lily, would you have come back to me after something like that? Is love tested in moments of doubt, or in how we repair the damage we cause when that doubt wins? I'd like to read what you think. I really need it. Leave your thoughts in the comments, what you would have done, whether you think Lily was right to come back, what advice you'd give to someone facing something similar, trapped between perfect evidence and the word of the person they love. If this story made you think about your own relationships, your jealousy, your fears, subscribe to the WinOwl channel, like this video, and share it with someone who might be about to make the same mistake I did. Because, in the end, trust doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks in silence, and only the one who dares to look those fractures in the face has any real chance of saving what they love.